I'm Bruce Fummey. Anyone that knows anything about Scottish history knows about the Battle of Bannockburn. English overlords had bullied Scotland and its king into submission. Scots found a new king, Robert the Bruce, to fight for them. And eventually, the English king leads an army into Scotland for an ultimate showdown. And from a disparate group of ordinary folk and warrior nobility, the Scottish king creates a sense of national identity that was new and different. But what if I told you it had all happened before? Now, Bannockburn was a decisive turning point in the development of the political structure of these islands. But it wasn't the only one. I had thought about calling this video the first great battle between the Scottish and the English, although I kind of know that I'd get howls of opposition in the comment section below, and to be fair, they might be right for lots of different reasons. In other ways, it might have been a fair title. The folks who died at Brunanburh might take issue, obviously, although people who died aren't normally in the issue-taking business. But you know how nobility had priests to intercede in their behalf throughout eternity? Well, warrior ghosts have internet trolls to do exactly the same thing. But what am I waffling on about with my diversions? Look, if you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right. In the meantime, let me tell you the story. If you follow this channel, and I hope you do, you'll know that I've made a series of videos about the kingdoms and peoples that led to the formation of Scotland. Today's story is about a crucial interaction between two of those peoples that's as important as Bannockburn in ensuring that Scotland became Scotland. You'll recognise these Aberlemno stones as Pictish. As I say, I did think about calling this the first battle between the English and the Scots, but I decided to prioritise historical accuracy over effective marketing. Just this once. To be fair, the main literary source, the Venerable Bede, seems to have called the southern group English. But nuance, that's for proper historians. In the post-Roman world, the Anglo-Saxons had burst onto the British scene. Now, some pedants might say, actually, Anglo-Saxons, Frisians and Jutes gradually over a period of time burst onto the British scene. But that's no way to tell a story. By the 7th century, the north of Britain had Angles, Picts, Scots and Britons. But the English/Angles were the big boys in the playground, stealing all the other kids' dinner money. They were the power in the north. Now, obviously, not every Angle was a warrior. Not every Angle wanted to wield power over Pictland. How could they? Pictland wasn't even really Pictland at the time. The Picts weren't a nation state so much as a group of slowly consolidating tribes with similar language and culture. In some ways, the Angles and the Picts were just farmers who spoke different languages. Although I've never met a farmer yet who didn't want his language and culture to dominate. Was that sexist? So, to the Battle of Dun Nechtain. This was Pictland's Bannockburn. Now, Bannockburn didn't happen out of nowhere. In the years preceding the Battle of Bannockburn, there had been conflict and battles during which the Scots had generally come out worst. The Battle of Dunbar, the Battle of Falkirk, and the forcible acceptance of English overlordship. Now, back in the late 7th century, people here were subject to Anglian overlordship and dominance. But around 670 AD, the Pictish people had rebelled against their English masters, leading to defeat at the Battle of Two Rivers. In the life of Bishop Wilfrid, it says, "The bestial tribes of the Picts felt a fierce contempt for their subjugation to the Saxons and threatened to throw off the yoke of slavery. And they gathered together countless tribes from every nook and cranny in the north, like swarms of ants sweeping from their summer hills." Charming. What did the Northumbrian King Ecgfrith do? he slaughtered an immense number of their people, filling 2 rivers with their corpses, and their tribes, reduced to slavery, remained subject under the yoke of captivity. So not so good then. Now, the 2 rivers being Avon and Forth, this wasn't far from Wallace's defeat at the Battle of Falkirk 600 years later. Plus ça change, you might say. But Wallace at the Battle of Falkirk wasn't the end of it. Robert the Bruce had replaced John Balliol as king, with no little controversy, I might add. The later justification of the Declaration of Arbroath, that he was king only whilst he protects us from the English, and that if he doesn't, we'll find somebody else to do it, is just what seems to have happened after the Pictish loss at the Battle of the 2 Rivers. They replaced Dresde with Bridai. I'll be honest, Aberlemno here, so close to Forfar, I desperately wanted to say Bridai. What am I like? Anyway, come here, let me show you something else. Now, Robert the Bruce didn't get it all his own way when he declared himself king. He had to impose himself on the very people that he claimed to protect. And sure enough, after Bridai took over from Dresde to secure the northern part of Pictland, there's a record of an attack on the Orkneys and sieges at Dundurn and Dunnottar. Bridai was coming south from Murray to consolidate control over southern Pictish territory in the same way as Bruce would go north to impose himself the other way round 600 years later. Also, in the run-up to the Battle of Bannockburn, Edward II faced distractions at home and abroad in the shape of, obviously, the French, an antagonist to his favourite Piers Gaveston. Egfrith, King of the Northumbrian Angles, faced attacks from Mercians, and his key lieutenant and kinsman was killed. At Bannockburn, Edward II of England was continuing his father's work of subjugating the entire island. In our story, Egfrith was trying to maintain the hegemony built up by his father, Oswy. Eventually, Edward II of England was left with no option but to come north and deal with Robert the Bruce. Likewise, Egfrith felt that he had no option but to come and put down these rebellious Picts. Again. Now, St Cuthbert of Lindisfarne warned him against pursuing the Picts, but Egfrith would have none of it. And this is what led to the Battle of Dun Nechtain, Nechtainsmere, if you're English. And it's at this point that I have to deal with the issue of location. See, I brought you to these Pictish stones at Aberlemno and Angus because for many years it was thought that the battle happened at Dun Nechtain just south of here. And the fact that this stone depicts what might be the battle, if the sun was going in the right direction, makes it tempting, and I'll be honest, interesting as a tour guide to visit. But it's probably not the real location of the battle. You see, against the advice of St Cuthbert, Egfrith and his men came north in force. The size and strength of his army meant that there could only be one outcome. Just as with the Scots at Bannockburn, the Picts were outgunned. And being outgunned, they fled like the cowardly dogs they were. They retreated north here into the Highlands and disappeared into the hills. Egfrith decided to pursue them. Now his advisor said no. Even the Romans didn't try and chase them into those Highland glens. What if it's a trap? But Egfrith marched on through the Killiecrankie Pass that would do for redcoats fighting Highland tribesmen hundreds of years later, over the Dromachtar Pass to the Cairngorms. As people enjoy water sports here today, it seems a world away from a battleground. But the annals describe a narrow place surrounded by mountains and next to a large loch. This is about 6 miles north of Canusie. Across there is the B9152. It goes through a narrow place, surrounded by mountains, and I'm standing next to that large loch, Loch Inch. At the other side of the road is the Dun Nechtain burn. In the local village, you'll find Dun Nechtain Road. On the banks of this loch, on the 20th of May, 685 AD, the dominance and expansion of the Anglos came to an end as the slaughter that left the king Egfrith and the majority of his army dead, so they could no longer subjugate their northern neighbours. Just like what happened at Bannockburn. The historian Bede tells us, henceforward, the hope and strength of the English realm began to waver and decline, for the Picts recovered their own lands that had been occupied by the English, while the Scots living in Britain and a proportion of the Britons themselves regained their freedom. Many of the English at this time were killed, enslaved, or forced to flee from Pictish territory. So Bridai was now king of the Picts. Just as Robert the Bruce created a sense of Scottish nationhood in opposition to England, Bridai created a Pictish kingdom in opposition to the Angles. Pictland had been a group of tribes with similar culture and language. This gave birth to a kingdom that would grow to become Scotland. Now, I've got a video asking whether Robert the Bruce actually gained Scotland's independence at the Battle of Bannockburn, and it's coming up on screen now. In the meantime, ha míon dóchas gwn bí lama alive. Cheery and Rasta.